first game. So much fireworks, a lot of subtlety, and really good play from both players. They're tactically sharp in the early going, and I think that bodes really well for the likelihood of a close, entertaining match. Nihal with the white pieces in game 2, and this time we get an actual Queen's Gambit, and Hikaru accepts it with d takes c4.
Plays a6. Hikaru has played this in many events, including classical chess over the board, so he is accustomed to these types of positions. But Nihal had some great games against Anish Giri in these types of positions in the Global Championship. Do you remember those games, Danya, where it felt like it was pretty close to equality, and then Nihal just outplayed his Dutch opponent? So I feel like Nihal feels very at home in this type of structure.
He loves this structure. That's a great observation, and I've had a ton of blitz games against Nihal where he goes for this structure, which appears so deceptively symmetrical. Now, you might ask, well, what about it is asymmetrical? Well, it's one thing in particular, the placement of the dark squared bishop. This bishop is so superior to its counterpart, which sits on a much less glamorous diagonal. Now, black doesn't really have any targets. I think Hikaru is going to manage to equalize from this position, but it often takes a lot of time to contain the activity of white's pieces, as Nakamura brings his bishop out to a rather ambitious d6 square, but now you have to watch out for tactics down the d file.
But at f3, it goes like,
ooh, bishop f6.
All right, bishop f6 and 94. Good eye by Nihal Sarin here. It looks so weird, right? When you could bring less active knight to f3. Why not? But he's keeping more pieces on the board, and not only is bishop takes f6 a threat, there could be an argument in the future for pawn e4, which threatens pawn e5, and whoa, Hikaru just castle, allowing bishop takes f6.
And I was actually going to point this out. This is an instructive decision. I'm not sure it's the best decision, but a lot of players rule this out just on principle. I can't ruin my kingside structure, but you see this in the French d takes e4. You see this in some openings. Bishop f6 gf is not the end of the world, and Robert Black can actually repurpose the kingside often to his favor by dropping the king on the relatively safe h8 square and then bringing the rook to the semi-open g-file. So we actually see Nihal refraining from what I thought was the main idea of knight 4f3.
Yeah, instead he goes, let's go for expansion on the queen side, a3, b4. He can sit his queen on b3 if he'd like, bring a rook to c1, a rook to d1. And it's clear where many of white's pieces belong. The difficult part is after that. Okay, queen e2 looks perfectly natural, but then what? That's the key question. And one thing that you have to keep in mind is that when you extend your pawn so much, black can strike with an a6 to a5 move, so be careful.
Yeah, that b4 pawn can be used as a queenside hook, and if you mindlessly push it to b5, not only does it become weak, but you leave a lot of weak squares in its wake. And e5 by Hikaru, I like that move. He's trying to drop this pawn on e4, get this knight out of the picture, and then bishop g4 is going to be a problem. Don't sleep on a potential Greek gift sacrifice. His pieces look deceptively passive, but they could all combine in a kingside attack real fast here. So an important moment here for Nihal to not sleepwalk through.
And maybe he can play pawn e4 himself, but that does give up control of the d4 square. Now, the knight on f3 and the knight...
comes to mind. And Robert, my guess is that Hikaru wants to recapture with the knight and eliminate White's Darkscourt bishop, and that pawn on d4 is probably going to be more of a nuisance than a weakness if you're Nihal.
That's right, the open e-file puts pressure on the e4 pawn. So I think that Nihal trying to figure this all out right now, but if he takes on d4, it's a flurry of trades. All those minor pieces are coming off because black is pre-moving knight takes d4 and it's played.
And he did, and there we go, and the pieces are off the board, but the position has gotten no less complex, and Nihal has to try to simplify with 30 seconds left. I love the move knight a5. In the event that Hikaru takes on b3 and takes on e4, Nihal will recapture on d4, and that position, I think, you'll be comfortable drawing even with 20 seconds left.
Absolutely. It's just liquidation. All pawns will come off in the center, all these minor pieces. But for Hikaru, who's ahead of the clock, he may say, let's keep this game going. I have a passed d-pawn. Maybe he can play rook d7, for example, which allows you to double rooks, protect the b7 pawn one more time, so that you can take on e6 with the queen. So things like this are in the cards for Hikaru, but I don't know. There's also some risk there. I understand he's ahead of the clock, but he has this isolated pawn, which is an asset if it's a pass pawn, but it's a liability if you can't protect it.
That's a great point. Rook d7, you also have to reckon with e5, because the knight can't easily step into d5. d4 pawn drops. There are some tactics there with knight c3 that have to be calculated, but Nihal has erased his time deficit as Hikaru makes this important early match decision. Bishop takes b3, basically a draw. Rook d7 keeps pieces on the board, and as Hikaru drops behind on the clock, he actually goes for it. Bishop back to c8, opening up more pressure on the e4 pawn.
An e5 play. I'm a little bit worried about some kind of queen e4, bishop c2. Not yet, because the knight's jumping right into c3, and the tactic that you were mentioning earlier, rook d4 is a blunder because of knight c3, and after the trade on d4, there'll be a fork on the e2 square. We don't have time to really show that right now. Nihal dropping to 15 seconds, Danya. He's got to make a move. He's got to find something. Maybe rook d2.
Knight c3. Knight c3 is so scary. And don't sleep on knight f4. He tries to prevent both at the same time, but Hikaru can just pick up this pawn and simultaneously defend what will now be an extra center pawn.
Wow, I think he was counting on rook e1 here, but the queen can slide over to keep the knight on d5 defended.
Queen f4.
Knight c4. Things are slipping away from Nihal Sarin right now. 7 seconds remaining. Great move, queen f4. You mentioned that. Danya, doubling rooks is not going to help. That pawn on d4 is extra and will be defended.
And look at this. He pushes the pawn up to d3. Now, you can see what Nihal's trying to do. He's trying to go g3, but that doesn't solve any problems. The knight has a million strongholds, and there comes Hikaru taking on h4, and it's mate.
Yeah, that was
c3, knight f4.
If the king wins the h-file, this is over.
Knight f4, it's 1-0-1. Knight f4
hits the rook and threatens rook h1 mate. That is resign time, and actually it's a win on